let's say it magically disappears in March, and everyone's like, whoo, we can go back to, rewind the clock 15 months, just start from there. Let's turn all the light switches back on. Which switch are you? Now, the more you can do to put yourself towards the front, obviously the better. All right, welcome back everybody. Rich Brubaker.
Brian Tam, what's up? How you doing?
With Behind the Grind. And now, in the past, we've never done an introduction, but actually I think it's a good time to maybe introduce what we're doing here on Behind the Grind in the COVID edition. So I'm actually in New York City, usually in Shanghai, and Brian is in Lisbon in his 4th Airbnb, usually also in Shanghai, and we're kind of just waiting to get home. But in the meantime, and actually before we all left, we started a new thing called Behind the Grind, which is basically, it's a vlog, but it's a long serial about our experience, mine and Brian's, in entrepreneurship. What we're trying to do is actually just follow our own trajectories in entrepreneurship from kind of behind the scenes. A lot of times you see the flashy social, the website, the business cards, the whatever, and then, from an external perspective, you're trying to figure out, like, how did they do that? But actually what we're trying to do is just flip that around, like show you the failures, the challenges, the successes, the things that we are learning from, the things that we're trying to get accomplished, and just, every week put up a new episode that kind of dives into those. All right, so as mentioned, I'm actually in New York City. I'm sitting in a WeWork for the first time. I'm so happy to kind of be out of work from home. I know some of you are looking forward to it. It feels great. But this week we're gonna be talking about a new topic, which I will let Brian kind of introduce because it was one of his. And I think from there, we're just gonna spend the next 28 to 39 minutes fleshing that out. So with that, Brian, you want to make a quick intro?
Yeah. So, I go to Rich every couple months and we're always talking about, all right, how's business going and things like that, even before this show. And this topic right now is how do we approach the last quarter of this year? Okay. This year has been a weird year for everybody. And in years past, I know Rich is a beast in quarter four. And he's all just gobbling up all that extra money. So I wanted to take this time to dive deeper into this and also to understand how this year might be different because of all the pandemic and budget tightening that may be happening. And maybe for me, let me just kick it off for me just to lay out some more context. This year has been obviously like really, really difficult and really challenging because maybe 70 to 80% of my business was offline workshops. Guess what's not happening right now?
Offline workshops.
And, I've pivoted, I've adjusted, but in essence, we're almost have created a whole new business in this year just to stay afloat, right? So how should we be thinking about quarter four? There's not that much time. I mean, we're at the cusp of it right now, I think, right. Depending on when this gets released. Is it too late? So yes, that's the setup. Where's your mind at right now, Rich?
Well, first off, we are kind of 20 days into Q4, right? And we have another 15 days before the next lockdowns kick in. So we haven't got a whole lot of time. But yeah, where's my thinking? Very quickly, I always kind of attack a Q4 scenario as in, there's things I gotta get done now for this quarter, and there's things I gotta prepare for next year. Now, the things we got to get done, I think, for right now, first off, you need to be looking at your cash flow, what you have left in the tank, and then how far is it going to carry you into 2021. So, if you're looking at yourself, you're looking at your business, where are you, honestly? Can you make it 6 months? Can you make it 9 months? Can you make it 18? Whatever it may be, that's what you need to do. Second is you need to make the hard decisions for next year now. That might mean cutting back on people, cutting back on office space, cutting back on coffee. Did I really use that?
So are you saying that is dependent on your cash flow and your runway?
Yeah.
Like we should just blanket cut everything right now and keep this, cruise liner coasting for as long as we can.
I would say you make cuts to what, like if you didn't use your $14.99 Zoom business level, cut it. Right? Like get down to the things and be very clear about like what you didn't use, because whatever you can cut now, you can invest later.
That $1.99 Dunkin' Donuts, I really need that.
But like really, you just have to cut out whatever you can, because whatever you can cut now, it's not a savings that you can pay yourself back. It's like you might be able to pay that extra intern for another month. You might be able to pay for the growth once things kick back on. It might give you that confidence to just keep going. Whatever it may be, like making those cuts, because basically the way I've always done is I will create a budget that, basically trajects out and says, okay, I'm not gonna make anything for the next year. Where am I comfortable? Where do I get uncomfortable? Where am I gasping for air? Now, if you're looking at your, you're looking at your cash flow and you're like, it's been a donut this year, and unless this thing turns back on, it's gonna stay that way. You need to make cuts, and you need to do it in the next 2 months, out of respect for, your landlord, anyone else that you got to pay, and current.
This guy working out of a WeWork right now. What the hell?
Hey.
That guy respecting the landlord.
2 weeks for free, okay? Online before November 30, all access pass, highly recommended. And you get cold brew coffee for free. Now it's like, okay, now what do I want to do next year? What can I sell? Who should I talk to? And like starting those conversations, starting that process. I think that's where QFAR gets really fun for me, is like, I can go and talk to 5 people, my current clients or potential people, or people I talked to this year, or new conversations that kind of came up, and like, what do you want to get done next year? Where can we work together? What are you going to work on that maybe there is no sale right now, but maybe, we just keep in touch, like, just trying to figure out, like, what are people trying to actually get done? And then whether you're really overtly selling or you are just covertly trying to figure out when should I call them back, or when should I tell them about my new product, whatever. That's kind of where I take that stage.
I think I think that's really, really clever and really smart, right? It really depends on your kind of work cycle right now, right? Some of us have been like that tactic. I've been doing that. I've already cut all my losses, right? Or all my expenses, right? And I've already trying to save as much as I could. I'm not thinking about quarter 4 actually. I loved previous conversations where you said something like you had a special low, like almost like a bite-sized chunk to offer to your corporations, to your clients, that could like gobble up all that remaining budget. So that tactic is really interesting to me. I'm not in the position to execute that this year, just because of everything that's changed. But how about for you? Can you elaborate on that, or do you remember that?
Definitely. Like, I've opened up new products that I normally wouldn't have considered, because I realize that there's a way to maintain, expand, deepen relationships. I mean, I'm doing some video editing work for an entrepreneur for a while, and now I came with a new idea, knowing I was basically watching what they were doing and saying, hey, this is how you can improve it. And I was giving them a ton of free tips, and said, if you need some help, just let me know. Like, I was not really trying to sell anything. Like, yes, we need help. And I was like, okay. So, it kind of worked out, but actually it's not about necessarily paying bills or building an entire new product for that overall to be sold to others. But if it can, not gobble up, but basically ensure that I'm constantly creating value and I'm learning with them, then yeah, I will take any of that project work, and if it comes with money, even better. And I really just try and figure out, like, what is it that my clients are working on currently? Where are they struggling? Are they gonna have a bigger budget, smaller budget next year? And then also when I'm creating proposals, I'm keeping that in mind. Like, I had one group this year, they said, look, we have a 15% cut across the board for all marketing. Now, I had already been planning on let's say, recouping some previous costs that I had discounted. So I had increased my budget 20%. So what I did was I reduced it 10% from that 20%. And actually, I made a little bit better off than I did last year, but I just kind of respected the fact that, we'd already had that conversation anyway, that I did a bunch of extra work and that they would actually try and make that up. So it wasn't like totally out of the blue and I wouldn't do anything sneaky, but I also knew, like, there was no way they're gonna be able to absorb all of it. So you know what? Maintain a relationship, look long-term, get what you can, because you don't want to lose a really nice client that you've enjoyed working with for 3 years, 6 years, whatever, because you were 5% more expensive than someone that, might do 80% of your work.
Here is this really great basics of business development, right? And it's just what you talked about earlier. reach out to those people, check in with them, see what's going on, where are their pain points, and if there's an opportunity, create some value add. Here's a list of tips. Here's a list of ideas. Here's all these things that I noticed. And remember all the things I've done for you in the past. Remember that relationship we have. And oh, by the way, if you want, there's a project. Here's a proposal. Here's a, and you're thinking really, really long term about it. And so even with this situation, crunch time coming up, deadline coming up, you're still, I love that you're still long-term strategic about this, because I mean, no matter what happens, you want to be here. It's unfortunate you got to play both sides. You got to, you still got to eat for today, and you got to think about, the next 10 years of your business and your brand.
And the other element I'd bring in here is that this is also why I have my team and I myself am working on a lot of content creation. And that can be, we're creating it and we're putting it out, say onto LinkedIn or onto whatever. But it also could be doing little research projects that are involving our community, our clients, our ecosystem, and then putting out specialized pieces that are just for 15 people. I mean, it's a lot of work, but you can send it to 50 people and be like, hey, we found these interesting insights. We thought that you'd find them valuable, because the reality is like what we're doing here, most people after this year, they're going to give up because things are going to go back to normal, right? And back to normal is going to mean they got their 3-5 clients that they lost last year. They're going to make their budget's going to improve. They're going to feel like, oh, we made it through. And then they're going to give up on this constant, process. And that I think that discipline will be lost. And when that discipline is lost, if you maintain it, you're just going to continue gobbling it up over the long term, right? And that could be, that's a larger ecosystem, and part of that ecosystem may turn into client projects or collaborations or whatever. But if you lose your discipline now because you got to make sales tomorrow, you really have to balance that. And I think that's where, like, I've always really enjoyed Q4 is the thing, like, what do I want to talk about? What do I want to do next year in this space so I can be more disciplined? How can I improve my process from the last 9 months so that the next 12 is much easier?
I don't think you're going to get it right off the bat, right? You might lose some, but that's part of the learning process. And I think like the ones that you do get, and as you start to figure it out, that's the difference between like maybe like a junior business development person and like a senior business development person, a master of his or her craft. And they can manage both sides, like when it's a depression, economic depression, where the budgets are tight, and also when things are swell and you can really be creating a whole career out of it. So these challenges, I mean, maybe, these kind of difficult times make you even a better business development person because you need the fundamentals so much more.
They better, right? Like there's no, like you've got no higher flame on your backside than right now. Yeah. And honestly, I'm sure you are as well, tons of amateurs reaching out to me. They're trying to figure this out. They're trying to sell me on this. And it could be from business model improvement to social media analyst to all kinds of stuff. And actually, I got an email right before we started. And I've been going back and forth, like, yeah, let's schedule a call. And I'm happy to talk to you. I mean, I don't know what you do. I can feel like you're going to sell me, like, but you
get a vibe, right? You get that vibe right away.
You do. It's just so clear. So they sent me like, yeah, just let me know. Here's my times next week. Let's have a call.
Interesting.
And then like they forgot about it, and then they just sent me an email like, so are you still interested in our services? Well, first off, I was never that interested. I didn't even know what you were selling if you read your own emails. And then, like I've got an editor on the opposite side of this who's helping with a bunch of videos. He's like, I realize this is going to take a lot more time than I thought. I'm just not going to keep going. But you entered into a contract. Like I gave you everything up front for you to make your decision. You must not need the money that bad, right?
Yeah.
And what I find is you just have a bunch of people who they think that it's just easy, or they can shortcut, or that it's not valuable to maintain their discipline. And from a sales perspective, that's an awful thing to start a career off on, and it's an awful way to try and build your business or to develop business when we're looking at a further economic ripple next year. Right.
And I think what's interesting here is like this show is called Behind the Grind. The idea is that we're talking to entrepreneurs about our own experience as entrepreneurs, right? And here we're talking also about the craft of being a salesperson, of being a strategist in your business development. Because I mean, that's the truth. As an entrepreneur, like, yo, Rich, who's selling your programs for you? Yeah, exactly, right? Oh, I mean, who's your best salesperson, right? To start off, definitely.
But I'm also my worst salesperson too.
That's fair, right? And I think, you have to beat yourself up over it. You have to figure it out yourself. You have to learn how to improve and all that, and create some structure, or figure out what it is that you need to succeed, right? I think this part of the entrepreneurial game is so underlooked at or under talked about, because like, it's a lot of sell a product, try to flip the business, and that's the game of entrepreneurship now. But like real entrepreneurship, real business development, like business development almost doesn't have anything to do with sales, and has to do with strategy and business modeling.
Right.
You have to have the skills of sales, but that's secondary. Like, what is it that you're selling? What is it, the overarching thing that you're creating?
And beyond that, I also think that if you're really focused on sales and business development, pricing right now, you have to be much more honest about what you can actually achieve, and then look through some conversations that you had. I mean, one of the things I showed you a few months ago, but also last week, was that proposal for a new video series I'm doing with sponsorships. And I had a conversation with someone this week, and it was really funny. The first question was, would you do this for free? And I was like,
did you slap them?
I was like, of course I would. No, but actually,
crying.
What they were doing is they were testing me. They're testing to see, like, am I really gonna, if they put the money into me, will I actually do the work, even if they're the only ones who fund it, right? So if I'm looking for 100 and they give me 25, and 25's the top bracket for that sponsorship, right? But let's say that I don't finish. I don't do the rest of my work because I get happy with the 25, or after a while I'm like, well, shit, I didn't get the 100, so it's not worth my time. Sorry, Mr. 25. It was a really smart question that made me realize, like, I need to be prepared to do a lot more work to gain the trust of new clients, and especially on the new products that we've been talking about developing, than I was in the past. Because as an entrepreneur, I'm getting much more, like, I've had the time to think about what I want to do, but on the other side of that, you have clients who are also much more aware of what they need to get done and what they're willing to spend for it. They're tired of overspending. They're tired of projects that don't have an end. They're tired, and you've got to recognize that you have to make them feel comfortable. You have to address their real needs, and then you also have to keep it real.
I think what you're offering here, this model, or this frame of thinking or approach for business development, is actually really, really great. What I'm taking away from it is how hungry and open-minded at the same time that you have to be to approach new projects this quarter in 2020. And beyond, right? I think we're talking about business development. Like, really, this conversation has evolved into business development in a pandemic. Like, right. Nobody has money. How do you start to talk about and as a service provider, we are in some ways very easily perceived as cost centers or expenses, and not as investments that have returns for the future. So what you're saying is, like, no, we need to, that's yes, that's partially true, but think about the upside and investment. Like, that is so much more important nowadays too.
Well, the other thing is, like, you got to figure out, like, let's say it magically disappears in March, and everyone's like, whoo, we can go back to, rewind the clock 15 months, just start from there. Let's turn all the light switches back on. Which switch are you? Are you up front and, like, you're critical, like, we need to get this on before people can come in, like, or are you really at the tail end of their hierarchy of needs? Now, the more you can do to put yourself towards the front, obviously the better. And again, that just gets back, how do you do that? It's constant communication. It's awareness of what they act like. I actually follow my top clients. I follow everything they're doing, corporate brand, as well as individually, the people owning the work that I'm, collaborating on. I follow them on as many social medias as I can because I really want to see like what are they liking, what are they sharing, because that gives me an insight into, what are the topics that they're either learning about during this time or are pushing from a brand perspective that are important to the brand through this time. Like something's going to come through, because if you remember back in April, we're here with you, we're here for you was the main message from every company. Go turn on the TV now. That's all disappeared. We're almost back down to, you can just buy our things in these 3 ways, right? Like, don't forget about us. But the reality is, like, people are starting to forget about them and me. And I need to find a way to bring myself up. So the more I can engage with potential clients, current clients, whatever, on social media through likes or comments or, happy birthdays, things that I didn't necessarily pay so much attention to, the easier it's going to be for them to remember that I was there with them the whole time, right? That may result in business. It may not. It doesn't matter. That's not the point. The point is that you're actually developing your relationship building, right? And
It's super fundamental.
And it's easier now, honestly, because it is just a digital away. You don't have to invite them for lunch, for drinks. Like,
Oh, by the way, if you don't mind, can you click like on this video?
yeah, please
right
like,
now?
subscribe. But it's easier now, and it's more scalable now. But you definitely have to put in a different level of work, because it can be, there's so many people trying to do it that are amateurs. And if you are going to be an amateur, it's very easy to follow that pattern. But if you want to stand up, you have to do the extra work. And I think for every business, it's different. I know what mine is, right? Last year, actually, I sent actually, I've given you one of these before, a speaker's gift. I give you that thank you card, right? So we did that for Chinese New Year. Now, it took us 4 months to send them because the office was closed and they're all sitting there. But we had a lunch box. We had a free trial of the Omni pork, the vegan pork. And then I had a couple other things threw in there. It was a nice little box. I sent it out. And I think we sent it to 25 clients from last year. And 15 said thank you. Like, they either emailed me or WeChat me saying thank you very much. This was really cool. 2 of them got returned because of corporate compliance concerns, but they still said thank you for the thought. But please give us your address. We have to send these back. And it's like, it's like those little things that we know we need to do that we don't set aside the time for. I mean, I've always enjoyed that part because I enjoy the relationship part. And why I said it's like why I'm like my own worst enemy sometimes in sales is I constantly underbid myself. Absolutely. Because I just want to work with good people on fun projects, right? And I'm not going to say that they know that, but
I mean, we're entrepreneurs, so we get to do that because we get to decide, right? And so if you're coming from pure business development point of view, you'd be like, yo, Rich, I can't do that. I have a quota to meet and all that. So they're playing a different game.
They're playing a different game. But if you can figure out how to bridge that, right? Like, again, like these gifts that I give, it's very specific because I'm sending to sustainability people. So, vegan product, right? It's a new product on the market that only a few people could get a hold of, and I was sending them a free sample. The second thing is the lunchbox was a bamboo one, right? And I didn't want to give people USB sticks and stuff that everyone, like, find something that means something to the people that are in your ecosystem, right? And it will help because it'll just like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. And I don't even put my logo on it. I just make sure the thank you card has my logo. That's it.
Right. That's enough. It's very natural for you. And so maybe it's not, you don't actually have to think so hard, but you have to understand what it is that your passion's about and how can you integrate those things together. Like you are so much a man who creates these great relationships, friendships, right? And so we're buddies. It's like, how can I help a buddy out? There's no thought about it. You're just doing something super natural. And I don't know, I like for somebody who's about to do it, I don't want you to like overthink it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, don't.
I get at like, don't. That's where you end up with a USB stick,
Yeah.
or a mug with your logo on it.
And no one uses it, right? So actually, to kind of tie that together with BD, I'll give a really clear example. So let's go back about 12 years. There was a group out of New York and also Hong Kong where they basically flew corporate boards around the world and did these immersions on social sustainable topics. It's called Leaders Quest. They actually just were the co-host of the big TED countdown that you saw last week maybe, or a couple weeks ago, depending on when this goes out. Now, really big group, really fun, great people, love working with them. They invited me to speak in front of one of the biggest providers of big food. One was fast food and one was the biggest agricultural company in the States. Now, really fun.
I wonder who that is, yeah.
Yeah, really fun. It was a small group of people, but I was always doing this for them kind of on spec because I just enjoyed the actual process. They invited another speaker who was David Young from Green Monday in Hong Kong. Green Monday is the founder of Omniport, but he's also the reason why the Beyond Burger is so popular in Asia. He's the one who set it all up. He just won the Schwab Foundation Award last year, like Entrepreneur of the Year at the global level, right? Won $1 million, no less. So really big guy. He brought me down to Hong Kong to speak at his conference, which is the first Green Monday Earth Day event. And I gave a keynote at that. So there's 3 speakers up front, then it was me, and I met Rona through that, and yeah, from Baishen.
Oh, no, sorry.
Not the Rona, Rona Chow, dude.
Rona. Yeah, I know.
Rona Chow. So I met her, I met the person I did the presentation for 2 weeks ago, the vegan investor. I met him, and then I met several others. So I've actually booked about 4 or 5 contracts out of that. So, these little things can turn into multiple projects. Now, my hope is that the people behind that, they valued the work because I did my best and I put everything in. And if they value it, well, they're investors into a lot of different companies. And maybe something comes out of it. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But you just do your best and you find synergies with people. And that energy will help people, that energy helped feed my business development cycle for the last, directly 5 years. And yeah, it was the first engagement I had was probably 10, 12 years ago. But it takes time. But man,
it's the long tail and the long game of business development. And I think, and which is why I was actually a little bit afraid by bringing up Q4 and having this conversation become too narrow because that didn't seem natural to me. I'm not like this killer instinct business person. Like I don't want to do sales like that, right? Yeah. And I'm really glad that this conversation, and it's no surprise, I guess, that this is how it's evolved. Like you're talking about long-term giving back to your ecosystem, right, just out of the kindness. Holy shit, we're talking about kindness in business now, but yeah, kindness. So that you can get business or that maybe one day there is a chance that it may come back to you 10, 12 years later, maybe. So
that's kind of how I take it. So I'm always taking like just a little bit further out. And I don't know, I'm not going to say that I'm a big winner, but it works for me. And it helps me get through difficult times when I
I was
have
about to say, that's another huge component that you have is that you can't be going up to somebody and be like, yo, you got any extra money?
Yeah.
Right? Unless you really know them really well and you just shake out your cup. um, unless you know them well. And the only way you know them well is because you're following them, you actually have a relationship with them. You follow them on social media, maybe you have some drinks with them, you get burgers with them, whatever it may be, you send them Omniport, you do these nice things uh, over a long period of time. And suddenly you can have those conversations. You can become a lot more candid. This has been like tremendous, both at the tactical level and also at the philosophical level of like what it means to be a business development person in 2020 and beyond, really. So thank you so much for this.
My pleasure, man. Well, dude, great catching up for another BTG. Rich Brubaker.
Brian Tam, thank you so much, everybody.
And remember, like, share, subscribe, and please send us the topics, the conversations that you would like us to have. We're happy to invite you in if you would even like that as well. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a great week.